Okay. Heart bowl. Good morning, sweet souls. Basin says, thanks for coming to Friday morning program. Fear not, Shamya will be back next week to teach, to lead us and teach the Srimad Bhagavatam class. So please excuse any offenses or shortcomings I have. So I don't feel qualified to sit right here. So we'll start with Jaya Radha Madhava. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Back of the book. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 5, verse 36. 1:5:36. Kurvana yatra karmani bhagavat chiksaye krishrit grinanti guna namani krishnasya unasmarananti cha. Translation. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada. An expert devotee of the Lord can mold their life in such a way that while performing all kinds of duties, either for this or the next life, they can constantly remember the Lord's name, fame, qualities, etc., pastimes. The order of the Lord is distinctly there in the Bhagavad Gita. One should work only for the Lord in all spheres of life. In every sphere of life, the Lord should be situated as the proprietor. According to the Vedic rites, even in the worship of some demigods like Indra, Brahma, Sarasvati, and Ganesh, the system is that in all circumstances, the representative of Vishnu must be there as Yagneshvara, or the controlling power of such sacrifices. It is recommended that a particular demigod be worshipped for a particular purpose, but still the presence of Vishnu is compulsory in order to make the function proper. Apart from such Vedic duties, even in our ordinary dealings, for example, in our household affairs or in our business or profession, we must consider that the result of all activities must be given over to the Supreme Enjoyer, Lord Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has declared himself to be the supreme enjoyer of everything, the supreme proprietor of every planet, and the supreme friend of all beings. No one else but Lord Sri Krishna can claim to be the proprietor of everything within his creation. A pure devotee remembers this constantly, and in doing so, he repeats the transcendental name, fame, and qualities of the Lord, which means that they are constantly in touch with the Lord. The Lord is identical with his name, fame, etc., and therefore to be associated with his name and fame, etc., constantly means actually to associate with the Lord. The major portion of our monetary income, not less than 50%, must be spent to carry out the order of Lord Krishna. Not only should we give the profit of our earnings to this cause, but we must also arrange to preach, I like this line, this cult of devotion to others, because that is also one of the orders of the Lord. The Lord definitely says that no one is more dear to him than one who is always engaged in the preaching work of the Lord's name and fame all over the world. The scientific discoveries of the material world can also be equally engaged in carrying out his order. He wants the message of the Bhagavad Gita to be preached amongst his devotees. It may not be so done amongst those who have no credit of austerities, charity, education, etc. Therefore, the attempt must go on to convert unwilling people to become his devotees. Lord Chaitanya has taught a very simple method in this connection. He has taught the lesson for preaching the transcendental message through singing, dancing, and refreshment. As such, 50% of our income may be spent for this purpose. In this fallen age of quarrel and dissension, if only the leading and wealthy persons of society agreed to spend 50% of their income in the service of the Lord, as is taught by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, there is absolute certainty of converting this hell of pandemonium to the transcendental abode of the Lord. If you only knew. This alone will help the attendant associate with the Lord and thereby purify himself in spiritual realization. The only condition for successfully executing such spiritual activities is that they must be conducted under the guidance of a pure devotee who is completely free from all mundane desires, fruitive activities, and dry speculations about the nature of the Lord. No one has to discover the nature of the Lord. It is already spoken by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita, especially and in all other Vedic literatures generally. We have simply to accept them in toto and abide by the orders of the Lord. That will guide us to the path of perfection. One can remain in their own position. No one has to change their position, especially in this age of variegated difficulties. The only condition is that one must give up the habit of dry speculation aimed at becoming one with the Lord. And after giving up such lofty, puffed-up vanities, one may very submissively receive the orders of the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam from the lips of a bona fide devotee whose qualification is mentioned above. That will make everything successful, without a doubt. Om Jnana Timirandasya Dhyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vancha Kopa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevata Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All glories to Prabhupada and Gurudev. May they inspire this class. Okay, so again, text 36. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers him, his names, and his qualities. So, something that really strikes me from this purport, a few things. One is the instruction, not just the encouragement, really the instruction that we're receiving from Prabhupada and the Vedas to remember Krishna in all of our duties. Right? Last week, in our last verse, we were talking about the difference between karma, jnana, and bhakti, right? And how with bhakti we're actually engaged, we are doing karma yoga, we are engaging in jnana yoga, but it's all in connection to Krishna versus being separated from, right? And so Prabhupada is continuing here in his purport in that vein of that the essence of this verse is to mold our lives, to create our lives in a way and structure our days in a way that we can always remember Krishna and never forget him. It doesn't mean that we leave our jobs. It doesn't mean that we stop being a parent. It doesn't mean that we don't clean our home. It doesn't mean any of those things. But how do we actually do all of those things and have Krishna with us, right? And know that not only are those our responsibilities, but that's also our service, right? It's our service. And I see this teaching as a way to cultivate an internal relationship with Krishna all day throughout our days, right? And we're looking for him externally. How do I see through divine eyes? How can I see Krishna in the trees? And sometimes it's easier to see. We were speaking last night in T&T Lock about being able to see Krishna through the trees and feel interconnectedness through trees, right? And being in nature. I know for me, I experience God when I'm in nature very easily, readily, but it can be more challenging for me to experience God and see Krishna in traffic, or when I'm feeling rushed, or when I'm feeling triggered, right? So the internal relationship, the internal connection that we have the ability and the opportunity to maintain with Krishna is what's going to fuel our ability to be able to see Krishna and connect him to our duties. So that's a central focus in every single teaching, in almost every class, almost every Srimad Bhagavatam class we have, every Gita class, it's always remember Krishna and never forget him. And so Prabhupada speaks about how Lord Chaitanya gives us a really wonderful method of singing, dancing, and refreshments. I love that, refreshments. So prasadam, right? So offering our food, and not only eating food, making it a personal vow to offer all of your food, to offer your food. So everything that you're eating is prasad, and then also offer that to other people, and to sing and to dance, right? To chant and to hear and to move your. Lord Chaitanya was like the epitome. Even our deities of him are so often one hand is up, right? And that mood of dancing, and he's always has the holy names on his lips, and offering the results, right? That's another big theme here I hear, of offering the results of our work, of our service back to Krishna. So an important point, and I was speaking with Shami about this, of quite clearly Prabhupada says to give 50% of your earnings to back to Krishna, right? And in charity, right? And so this is a very high standard, right? And Prabhupada he's really referencing, like Rupa Goswami gave 50% of his earnings every year in back to the movement. And if we frame that out, that's not actually practical for all of us to be able to do, depending on our earnings, depending on our expenses, and how many mouths we're feeding, and where we live and, you know, all of these things. And so we're not meant to collapse in our material life out of giving and charity, right? But rather, Prabhupada's referencing, let me pull this up, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10, Canto 10, 14, verse 3, he talks about giving up the process of speculation, and wherever you are in your life, stay there and engage in hearing and chanting. And also, this is the whole, in general, this whole verse is referencing the Nectar of Instruction, verse 8, right? Which is the essence of all advice is always engage in hearing and chanting. Yeah. And so organizing your life in a way to do so, even when you're working, right? And so a really practical and helpful rule of thumb that I've been given from mentors and teachers, and I know Shamya has as well, is to try to set aside 10% of your income to giving in charity, right? And giving back to whether it's the cow Goshala at Govardhan Eco Village, or it's, you know, where something that, or to a temple that you felt really impacted or affected by, or, you know, so many of you give in charity, like, you know, Melanie uses her funds monthly to buy flowers for the Bhakti House, right? Rather, I don't want to be reimbursed. I want to be that's giving in charity. Yeah. Right? It's our Bhakti House is also, you know, it's our temple. Mm-hmm. Right? So to think about that, to actually take time to allocate, like, where are my funds going, you know? If you have a budget, things like this, but to actually budget in monthly, 10% of my monthly income I'm going to give back. And that is actually, that can pinch, that can be a little uncomfortable. You might have to sacrifice something. However, it's not going to collapse. Mm-hmm. It's not going to collapse and if it is, then you give less. Right. So it's based on your income, right, and what you can do. So something to contemplate and to think about in this. And if you're not making, you know, a monetary salary, you know, how can you give in charity through service in a different way? Yeah. Right? Yeah, and then the last thing I want to, and I also want to ask you all a question, is Srila Prabhupada is really explaining that sharing Krishna's teachings is one of the highest services. Okay. Right? And that preaching with compassion and a joyful expression. And that we are so highly encouraged by all of the devotees above us and all of our teachers to share Krishna's love, right? To share Krishna's message through the way you act, through your example, through how you carry yourself, your communication, what you talk about. And even if you all will be sitting here at some point leading a Srimad Bhagavatam class, and up until that point, how are you also sharing bhakti, right? Within our sangha, but also within your circles outside of that. Right. And so to preach with compassion and joyful expression and find the way that is actually natural expression, right? What do we talk about often? Shamya says, not emulating, not imitating, right? I'm not sitting here trying to teach a class like Shamya, right? I teach the class like Kishori, and inspired by the teacher, inspired by Shamya, inspired by my Gurudev, inspired by my more senior devotees, right? But to make it my joyful expression, because then that's actually preaching, speaking from my heart, which will land, right, versus trying to just say things.
Krishna says that in the Gita too, to do your prescribed duties your way, but don't emulate. It's better to do it imperfectly your way than it is to do it perfectly someone else's way and emulate. Emulation is not the key to going down the path of bhakti. It's doing it your own way.
Yeah.
So I'm receiving your own way very, very warmly, Kishori.
Thank you, Justin.
Haribol.
Very well. The other interesting, it just struck me when I was reading the text last night of the cult of devotion. And the cult is a very charged word, you know, and as we've talked about, the word cult comes from culture. And I don't know if I've heard it or it didn't land for me, but I was like, I actually could get down with the cult of devotion, right? Of like, it's not, you know, and it's by choice. It's by choice, and it's really, when I read that, I took pause, because cult just is sort of a word that makes me pause, because I'm accused of being in a cult and such, right? So, however, right, what Prabhupada was speaking about in this purport was around creating a culture of singing and dancing and refreshments, right? Of sharing Krishna's love in a joyful and compassionate way, in offering everything you do in your actions in your life, in work and otherwise, right? And connecting it back to Krishna. And what an incredible culture to be a part of.
Jai.
Incredible culture to be a part of.
Mercy.
So much mercy. Hariom Tat Sat. So I'd love to hear from one of you any reflections, one around cult of devotion, because I'm just curious how that lands for you, because we all kind of, Mel giggled with me when I said it, when I read it, and any other reflections from the purport or what you heard, takeaways like that. Turn the musician's audio off.
Yes.
I mean, one of the things that stood out to me in the purport was when he was talking about right spot. Yeah. He wants the message of Bhagavad Gita to be preached amongst his devotees. It may not be so done amongst those who have no credit, austerity, charity, education, etc. Therefore, we must go on to preach. And it's like, you think about that, because most of our lives, when we're not, you're in an awesome spiritual field, but like a lot of us aren't. Right. And so we are out there, amongst many people who
trenches.
Yeah, who are really, they're in dark places. They're, there's a lot of drama. There's a lot of challenges, and it's just such a really wonderful thing to think about. Like, okay, he wants us to preach Bhagavad Gita amongst his devotees, and then that's harder to do with all the others. But then you really think about like the soul of the soul of every being, and how somehow we can bring in that compassion, the essence of Bhagavad Gita, into what we do every day. It doesn't have to be active preaching. We can preach through example. We can preach through kindness, like we talked about last night, and like really offer the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita in that way. And so just really thinking about like my daily life are acts of preaching without having to say a word. And like that's really powerful to think about it like that. And then I think like cult of devotion, I was thinking, like, I laughed a little because it's like, that's also the first time I heard it quite like that. Yeah. And I laughed a little because I was like, that's a sweet cult. It's like the cult of devotion.
Get down with that.
Get down. And then I just thought, like, it was just, what an interesting way to say it. Like, because I know he means culture. And so like thinking about, like, I think about culture, a cult of devotion, as like this really enveloped culture of devotional life and living. And I've been, so blessed to be in like deep association with a devotee of 30 years and watch his culture of devotion every day, and to see what we can, when we actually live like that, to see what that means, to watch that, to witness it, to notice like how much more deeply we can pour our hearts into our devotion every day. And like, I see it like this just really beautiful way of just like finding true self-expression. And that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Jai.
Yeah, it's like, I appreciate everything you've shared, and having association with people who are more senior to us, and then having a more intimate association in these different ways. Like, it is such it's like shows what's possible through hearing and chanting, right? The depths of where you can actually go in your bhakti. And and then as you were speaking, Mel, it reminded me of my favorite teaching from St. Francis of Assisi is preach but only speak when necessary. Right. And so the way that you live, right, and act and just hold space for someone is also is an expression of Krishna's teachings. And I think another side of what Prabhupada's speaking there, and what the point you're making around like those that are qualified to actually, like, devotees are those that are actually qualified to share the message of the Bhagavad Gita. There are so many commentaries of the Bhagavad Gita that are written by people who are not devotees, who live Krishna out of the Bhagavad Gita,
Right.
like meaning a personal form of God out of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
And so he's also speaking here, like share with people and tell them like this the most confidential secret, right? To those that are not to those that are inimicable, who can't hear it, those you just show up, and those that you're like, oh, you can tell they like share little nuggets. You're not your body, you're not mind, you're divine.
Right.
You can connect back to the source of your divine, right? Like in your way, in your self-expression, as you said.
Right.
Thank you.
I would like to mention, when I saw the Hare Krishna movie, Dr. Larry Shin was a commentator in the movie. And if you remember Kishori, I told you that I couldn't believe it because it's one of my parents' very, very good friends that is the, president of the university that they all went to. And when I found out about him, I looked him up and I ordered 2 books. They're not in print anymore. One of them is called The Dark Lord, and the other one, I can't remember the name of it. But basically, his dissertation was on the Hare Krishna movement and comparison to other cults out there that were prominent in the 70s that gave cults an extremely bad name. Talked a lot about how parents in particular were freaking out because kids in college were quitting college and joining the Hare Krishna movements, and they thought that they were being kidnapped and brainwashed and all of this stuff, and they hired people to deprogram them, kidnap them back and deprogram them. And it was just it's a really interesting book because it really talks about ultimately it defends the fact that the Hare Krishna movement, like all of these people, nobody was forced, everyone chose to do this, and it truly was a cult of devotion. Like it wasn't anything negative. There was nothing heinous happening, and the people weren't being kidnapped and dragged away from their material lives. These people were choosing to do so, and it was just so new and different that it was not understood, as most new things aren't. And it's just really interesting. But certainly for people my age and older, cult has a very different connotation. And I just think that was a really interesting read. And again, I agree with Mel and what you've said is that if this is a cult and this is the kind of devotion, then sign me up. I'm in.
Thank you, Tanya. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense when people like give their lives in the way that we give our lives as devotees, because people assume there has to be manipulation. It can't just be complete surrender and will and love of God. There's got to be money, corruption, manipulation. And so it makes no material sense, and therefore there has to be a problem. Right. So the Dark Lord. And not because he is mischievous, actually, but he's not. He's just a dark complexion. Sham. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Tanya. Any other reflections, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the purport really brings it home. I've been reading a lot of Prabhupada's lectures and just his initiations and services that he's done. There's a whole database. It's really interesting, and I try to tie into how to integrate bhakti to others, like sneak the prasad in, right? But also find avenues at work where I have constructive conversation. I've been kind of being reflective about my career and what I do, and it's always gave me some pains in the past. But really in the last 6 months, I've really just changed. I think it's been a lot of my practice that's just changed, and seeing devotional work and everything. And I'm finding these avenues where I'm meeting with students who are super receptive, asking questions about my bhakti, asking questions about what do you have a mala? Because I do a morning meditation with a group. And
at the school?
Yes.
Amazing.
Actually, I'm going to head out soon because I have to go to it. But and it's really and I don't don't want to be hey, here it is. This is the Hare Krishna movement. I just like to just talk about it, as like as you would teach a child, and slowly build on it. It's and crazy. It's been interesting because I've been infusing bhakti into my practice and my work with my leadership with my team. I had a student come to me the other day, and it was super moving. She came up to me and she was like, "Justin, I don't know what happened, but this as soon as I walk in this building, I feel welcomed, warm, loved, and everyone's just having a great time. You're doing such a great job." And I went to her name's Swikriti. She's from Nepal. I'm like, Swikriti, I didn't do anything. I just see the best in everybody and I just work for that, the spark in everybody. And she just was extremely appreciative. And the students are loving it. Like we are the busiest we've ever been, ever. Because the kids just want to be in an area where they're feeling this energy that's been changing in our operation. So like I said, I've been looking at how I can change my paradigm because I've always thought of work as going to work and it's the mundane and I'm doing things I don't like I'm serving meat and I'm doing these things that I don't like. Okay, I have to do these things. There's people that are going to buy those products anyways, but I've shifted my whole grab and go. Half my grab and go. My stores are vegetarian. My new sushi vendor has his own restaurant now, and he brings vegetarian rice that I offer every day. So we are serving prasad. No one knows it, but we're doing it. And it's been enlightening because I try to think of Prabhupada's message through this all, right? It's like, how do we move forward with bringing bhakti into people's lives, but like still like not scare them away. And so I'm trying to find that balance. And I've been really just kind of, you know, Prabhupada's been my secret guru Dave at this point, and I'm just he's all our Guru Dave. But like, I just really just listened to him try to receive what the mission was, the message was, and try to move through that. And I've really seen the perpetual you put in. It's like Krishna. When you start seeing Krishna in everything, in everyone, it doesn't become work anymore. You watch the body do its tasks, but you're just there with God. So.
It's incredible the power of the transcendental sound vibration of the holy name, like breaks all barriers and and just having chanting in that cafeteria or in that kitchen, right? And japa and a higher taste. I'll look on that, right? A higher taste, bringing a higher taste.
Yeah.
And it works. And our relationship with Krishna is reciprocal. Right? There's that reciprocity. So it's really beautiful service that you're doing, Justin. And the way that it can transform your own experience within it. You're just in shifting your mindset and seeing it as service and what would Prabhupada do here and how would he view this, right? And then how that's affecting ripple effect. So
it's like you don't have to go and be a sannyasi. You can just.
Most of us will not.
Yeah, it's just there's great work to be had.
Yeah.
It's the energetic effect, the energetic shift that helps everyone else see because they can tell, you can feel it, right? They're like, what's different? I don't understand. And that's that people can feel it. And that's what we hope for, right? We don't even have to necessarily say anything.
That's right. Jai.
Jai.
Okay. Everyone share, feel complete. May we share and spread this mission of Lord Chaitanya gifted to us through Srila Prabhupada, cult of devotion in a new age way, where it's by choice, by true love of God, sincerity, humility, and may we spread this message in our own unique way, our own expression through singing, dancing, and refreshments. Thank you for considering our requests. Hari Om Tat Sat. Namchakopa Trivyacha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.